Marches and rallies were held across the United States this past Sunday, July 28th, to demand justice for the police killing of a black woman named Sonya Massey near Springfield, Illinois. Massey, a mother, had called for help, thinking there was an intruder in her home. Body camera footage showed Illinois Sheriff's Deputy Sean Grayson asking her to remove a pot of boiling water from her stove and then shooting her in the face, killing her. Grayson also refused to issue immediate help as Massey lay dying. He was fired and has been charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. Massey's 4-year-old cousin, Terrell Miller, had also been killed by law enforcement this past March. Prosecutors refused to charge the killer in that case. My guest is Kat Brooks, an organizer, activist, performer, and host of the radio program Law and Disorder on KPFA, Pacifica Radio in Berkeley. She's also the co-founder and executive director of the Anti-Police Terror Project, where she was instrumental in the formation of MH First Oakland, a non-police alternative for people experiencing mental health crises. She organized the vigil for Sonya Massey in Oakland this past Sunday. Welcome to the program, Kat.
Thank you, Sonali. Good morning.
It was very difficult to look at that video. I forced myself to watch it because I'm a journalist. I didn't want to. But that's the kind of thing that we journalists have to do. And of course, it has become par for the course now that these sorts of incidents keep happening. Sonya Massey was someone who struggled with some mental health issues. It's not clear whether that was in any way part of the situation when she called for help. And I'm wondering what motivated you to organize this vigil in Oakland on Sunday as part of a nationwide series of rallies. Why is Sonya Massey's case resonant?
So APTP has been in existence for 15 years, and this has been part of our practice, right? It's part of our rapid response. Recognizing that when one of our community members is stolen, murdered by law enforcement, the immediate impact, of course, is on their immediate family, but all of us as Black folks, as brown folks, as Indigenous folks that walk outside every day or watch our children walk outside every day, walk with the anxiety, even if it's very deep, that we know we may not come home. And so it's important for all of us to be able to come together to process trauma, to grieve. Sometimes the response is rage. And it's through the processing of trauma that we build resiliency to be able to continue to fight. Particularly with Black women, however, we know that they so often are left out of the narrative, of police violence. And so since 2015, we have made it a point in practice to be sure that we say as many of their names as loudly as we can with as many people as we can each time we are murdered. In terms of resonance, you'll notice, and Sonali, we've talked before, I'm already having a hard time getting through this. In 15 years of doing this work, it's one of the most egregious and vile examples of state violence I've ever watched. Not just her murder, but then the way you hear them talk about her afterwards. Yeah. Just that the very obvious dismissal, disregard of her as a human being is incredibly painful to watch and super reflective about how Black women in this country are viewed and treated every day.
If we had an infrastructure in this country that, bit by bit removed police from the equation altogether, and Sonya Massey had lived in a place where she could have had an alternative when she called 911, we could have had a completely different situation. It would have been a completely unremarkable issue, and she could have called a place like Mental Health First Oakland, right? The organization, the non-police alternative that you've helped to have found.
Yeah, she could have called MH First. She would have been met with a volunteer who would have engaged with her in, a trauma-informed initial intake. If a need to dispatch would have happened, a team of 3 would have shown up at her house. They could have scanned the yard
without
for
guns.
intruders. Without guns. While someone stood at the door with Sonya and had a conversation with her. and then tried to figure out, or work with her to figure out what safety looked like for her. Participant determined planning. And likely, uh, the situation would have been de-escalated. Sonya would have went to bed. The team would have gone home, and that would have been that. And the world would not even have known that that call was ever made. That's what could have happened, and that's what should have happened. Um, and that's what needs to happen. Moving forward, we're brainwashed, right? At Sonali, you and I talked about this. You've got a chapter of it in your book, by propaganda, right? From the time we're
Yeah.
in the womb, um, that police are safety, and we're watching it across the country, particularly here in Oakland, where we're still feeling the ramifications of the economic pandemic that came post or along with coronavirus. The knee-jerk reaction, right, is more police, more surveillance, more cops, more cages, even though all of the data shows that that actually doesn't make us any safer. It actually makes us much less safe. And we're going to see that, right, in a year or two in these cities that have increased police funding and police presence. That nothing changed, and that things actually got much, much worse. We were able to really push, because of the movement in the streets, OPD to stop murdering folks. They used to be one of the most murderous police departments in Northern California. My expectation is, with this white lash, post the defund movement, we're going to be right back in the streets responding to OPD murders. Because that's what happens when you increase their power and presence in our neighborhoods.
On the case of Sonya Massey, the Illinois Sheriff, Sangamon County Sheriff Jack Campbell, apologized. Well, I don't know if it was apologized necessarily. Well, he said, I'm sorry. She called for help and we failed her. I can't imagine the pain that her family and friends feel right now. We failed her. We didn't do our jobs. And I've never said in my career before that we failed her. And of course, Sean Grayson, the person who pulled the trigger, who killed Sonya Massey, was fired immediately and facing 3 counts of first-degree murder and other charges. Is this unusual to get this apology, this admission that everything went horribly wrong, to have this person be fired and facing charges, compared to the standard alternative, which we've basically seen for so long, that, maybe a cop might get suspended with pay and then be right back on the job and be completely exonerated, not even indicted?
I mean, the first thing I say is his apology doesn't bring Sonya back. His
Yeah.
apology doesn't erase the trauma. His apology doesn't have Sonya's daughter, right, ever get to feel her mother's arms around her again. So, I can tell him what he can go do with his apology, because why did you hire Sean Grayson in the first place? This was his 6th policing job. So the sheriff is actually responsible for that killer being on the streets, first of all. Second of all, it's becoming more and more usual for this to happen. And that's not because police departments are reforming. That's not because the mentality has changed. This is what we call a concession from the state. They knew, they knew what the potential reaction in the streets in Springfield, across the country was going to be. And so this is meant to keep us inside. This is meant to quiet the fire. Um, we'll see what happens with Sean Grayson, whether he's actually tried, whether he's actually convicted. But again, as abolitionists, is that justice, right? Like Sean Grayson sitting in a cage, what wounds does that actually heal? None. It's a concession by the state, and we've got to we have to take advantage of these moments, right, where the state is like, whoops, to push for radical reforms. And his sorry doesn't mean anything to me, and I'm sure it means nothing to that community or Sonya's family.
Kat, the presidential election is rapidly coming up, and Donald Trump has said that if he gets a second term, he will grant immunity to all police officers involved in charges over killing people in the line of duty. Totally unsurprising position, of course. His opponent, likely a presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party, Kamala Harris, is someone that you're familiar with. She was a California prosecutor. She was a top cop. She was attorney general in the state of California. Her record is mixed. She's seen as the progressive alternative to possibly even Joe Biden. But what do you expect to happen if she becomes president in terms of a federal response to racist, violent, and murderous policing?
So first of all, I want us to stop bastardizing the term progressive. Kamala
Mm,
Harris is not a progressive. She's a neoliberal.